Mr. Michael Dinetz, thank you for coming on to Haven's House of Horror. I know you and I have we've been talking for some time now. Working on House of Flies as our special effects supervisor, which we just adore having you. You have been it's always so great talking to other departments like about a project that you're working on, because you see so many other layers to it that you don't necessarily see from, a director or a writer's perspective as you're working through a screenplay and just putting a story together. So it was really cool to go through with you, do this screenplay and just break down what you see and how much more there is to it. But when it comes to special effects, I mean, what was your journey here like? I know you it looks like you got into it in school. You found your passion for it.
My journey was definitely not what I would consider the average journey. I think a lot of people that get into the industry, I think they grow up admiring makeup effects professionals and adoring the work that they did in film and covering themselves in latex and plaster and doing things the wrong way and like losing eyebrows and things like that. There's loads of fun industry stories about famous people in the industry that lost their eyebrows as kids. And that was not me.
I was going to say, was that ever you?
No, it really wasn't. I was always artistic. I drew from a young age. I started sculpting in Play-Doh. I did all sorts of what we would now refer to as fabrication work at different materials.
Sure.
I was always artistic. And I knew from a young age, I would tell family members I was going to be an artist when I grew up. And that held, obviously. I started doing animation at age 12. To anybody out there that's an animation nut, I found a school that was run by one of Ralph Bakshi's animators. And I learned how to hand draw, animate, and how to do stop motion and claymation. What's really interesting about claymation is very little of what people call claymation was actually done with clay. Most of it was stop motion puppets. But there's some real claymation out there.
Okay.
Like Wallace and Gromit is really done with clay.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Mr. Bill at SNL was really done with clay.
No shit.
It's a pain in the butt because you get fingerprints everywhere and it's not a medium that sets up.
So what's that look like for because it reads as claymation, but it's a puppet. So what does that look like?
Well, the puppets start out as clay sculptures. You just make molds of them.
Got it.
Run it in an alternative, more durable material, most likely foam latex, although some people will use silicone these days. Not that there's a kind of stop motion work going on these days. So I did that until the end of high school. And I have a massive love of late 70s, 80s, and early 90s hand-drawn animation. That's where I wanted to go, and that's not where the market was going. And I recognized that, and I knew I likely wasn't going to have the career that I wanted. It's really ironic, as if I had stuck with it for a really long time, I might have actually got the career I wanted, because there is a bit of a resurgence of some of that stuff. But it didn't feel like the direction I wanted to go. And my parents, who were always supportive and were like literally going to pay for college, were like, you've got to pick something. Pick something. We'll back you, but pick something. So I found a school not too far from where I grew up that had a bachelor's program in industrial design. And for anybody not familiar, industrial design is this big umbrella term that covers toy design, packaging design, product design, exhibit displays, which in the industry we would think a lot of this as props and set decoration and production design work, honestly, and it covered all of that. We went to an open house and checked out some of the stuff people had made, as one does at an open house, and that seemed like kind of a no-brainer. It would let me do the thing I love, which is work with my hands. I also learned some really outdated skills that I love to this day, like hand-drawn marker renderings, which if anybody's ever deep dived into how products are designed, it starts out with with drawings and progresses these days to computer generated full color models. But before that software was perfected, we were doing it all with markers and colored pencils. And I honestly think those design drawings have more soul.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can find them in books and on websites. But I was probably one of the last, handful of classes that got an education in that. I still use some of that today when I do my own design work for clients. Although I like to bring in a concept artist. Like, I can obviously do stuff and do a lot of things really well, but there are people that just do some of it better. And I also like to share the wealth a bit. So I've got a guy who I like to have do concept work with me. And we may end up doing some of that. That's a conversation yet to be had. So I made it through my program, but during the first and second and third terms, there were some required courses in what they called special effects, what you call special effects. I want to full stop, since this is a great platform to do it, address that. Special effects is the department that does pyrotechnics and wind and rain and major fluid gags and stuff like that. That's the special effects department. So if you ever watch the end credits of a movie that was made, shall we say, properly, or under union supervision, because they have a lot of governance on this, you will see that the people credited as special effects, that's what they did. You'll see special effects riggers and, pyrotechnics people and all that stuff. What we do didn't really have a proper title until the 70s. It was sometimes loosely referred to as special makeup. And then Tom Berman, who worked with John Chambers on Planet of the Apes, coined a phrase, special makeup effects. And this is all of the, it ranges from fake tattoos to basic injuries up to giant creature suits and specialty puppets and all that stuff. So that's special makeup effects.
Yeah.
Some people will attribute this to practical effects, but I would say if you lump those two departments together, you get practical effects.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
The alternative would be non-practical effects or visual effects. Visual effects is sort of interchangeable these days with digital effects, but before digital was mainstream, visual effects was all kinds of things. It was glass matte paintings. It was specialty animation techniques. It was cloud tanks. Some of that's still used today. And it just slowly became like all computers. So now it's sort of an interchangeable situation, visual and digital. And that's, but those were my classes. And they were, I found out years later that the teacher of those classes had taken this really prestigious course that was the most highly recognized and lauded course within our entire industry. And he took all of that and just dumbed it down to the point that I was learning things the wrong way because they couldn't get students to pay attention. So that frustrated me in one sense. It gave me my exposure. It birthed my career.
Right.
But it also, in hindsight, felt like it was a setback.
Yeah,
I had
absolutely.
So I got my degree. I stuck with it. I have an actual degree. And then I moved to the West Coast, went to a makeup school. Neither my college nor makeup school still exist anymore, which is really interesting.
Oh, okay.
I feel like I'm just putting schools out of business.
Watch out, everybody. You heard it here first.
The art institutes did themselves in. They had a lawsuit based on all sorts of predatory loans and whatnot.
Yikes.
So a small company swooped in and bought a few of their locations around the country, and then all the other ones just closed. The one I went to, while it wasn't their corporate headquarters, was the original art institute that started the chain. And then at some point they moved their headquarters to Pittsburgh, which also had an industrial design program that did some creature stuff. In fact, the program was actually taught a little better, I found out after the fact. I was able to commute to school, which was great. I had an entire basement as a workshop for all my projects. I have no regrets. It offered me a lot of benefits other students didn't have. And that's fine. And makeup school filled in a lot of gaps, and the way I learn filled in the rest. And that, that kick-started a 22-year career.
Yeah, that created Haunted Dreams Effects Studios, yeah?
Yeah, originally, I branded myself under Gratuitous Gore Effects, which it later felt kind of pigeonholed me. And then I had a company that was sort of like a loose partnership that operated in 2 countries when I was working really heavily overseas, and that was called Diabolic Design Studio. And then after that sort of crumbled, I decided I wanted to just rebrand myself, and I was trying to think of something that was just less alliterative, um, and a little easier to say, but also told a story, but like the previous iteration, didn't have a name that pigeonholed me into one specific genre of the work. I think a lot of people just think effects artists do nothing but horror movies. And like horror wasn't even on most of the radar for a lot of us until the 70s. This craft as a profession has existed since, I would say, for a little over 100 years now in film.
Fascinating. Wow.
It was the early stuff, it was all aging and like little prosthetics, noses for Dickensian characters in, movies and early TV. A lot of complicated wig stuff. In many ways, it's what Saturday Night Live is now. It's a lot of character makeup and wigs. And we started to see more advanced and ambitious projects. Like obviously Planet of the Apes was hugely ambitious. And it was done with a team of people that would make people's heads today spin at how small it was. Like the prep build compared to something like How the Grinch Stole Christmas that had probably, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 people working in the workshop. Like Planet of the Apes was done with like 5 or 6 people.
Holy shit. Wow.
And then more people on set, obviously. But you had the 7 Faces of Dr. Lau, which was William Tuttle. There were some ambitious projects early on, but you hit the 70s and we started to see this explosion of more ambitious projects. And the 80s was probably the birth of the mainstay modern heavy duty effects film. And that's why I think a lot of people look at the 80s as the heyday of our craft. I don't think our craft ever died. You talk to the old disgruntled people, they're like, oh, there's less work now. There isn't less work now. There's more work now. No, we're not making giant T-Rex puppets anymore. We're just not. But in the same token, starting in the early 2000s, you started to get makeup effects on like every TV show there was. Like before that, you had a handful of shows. You had Buffy, you had the Star Trek shows, you had Babylon 5. But there were not shows left and right. Now there's just shows left and right all over TV, like all the medical dramas, all the different creature shows, the rebirth of Doctor Who. Like it's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And as all of these shows and movies that you've mentioned, they're all very leaning into practical effects. And that's something that you lean into yourself. Do you think that's because you're somebody that likes to work with your hands, especially in a time that we're looking at so many digital effects, is it almost an art to you to make sure that that kind of craft is still out there when so many things are being replaced through?
It's an interesting question. I would say that, this is where we bring AI into the conversation. A lot of people are terrified of AI. A lot of people back when Jurassic Park came out thought that all practical effects were dead, whether it be special effects or makeup effects. They were just like, this is it. We're all going to lose our jobs. And what's really interesting is that didn't happen. You saw a good stretch of time where filmmakers just leaned hard on digital. That was their answer. And what I find, we saw that in my industry with silicone. We see it now with 3D printing. Whenever there's a new thing, filmmakers want to use it as a crutch. Whenever they don't have an answer for something, that becomes the answer. And it's inherently riddled with problems. So I'll sort of work my way backwards. So with digital effects, it's riddled with problems of one, in the early days, you were just dumping stuff off on people who didn't really have a way yet figured out how to do it. They're like, we'll do it, but we don't know how we're going to do it. So it's just
Right.
like,
Somehow.
they were writing their own software. They had to like devise stuff that hadn't been devised, which is what we do in Practical Land.
Yeah.
But you had
They
to
were
basically
innovating on their own terms.
You have to force a machine that just does ones and zeros to make a thing.
Right. Yep.
And do it the way you want it. And if you ever talk to digital effects artists, the first thing they'll tell you is if you can do it in camera, do it in camera. Like, one, they don't like being the crutch.
Right.
They don't like when a studio movie has a fixed release date and they have to now sleep in their office because there's a release date, but they keep adding things. Having said that, there's just shit we can't do. Like, you wouldn't have Marvel movies if it wasn't for digital effects. Like, the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, they interviewed Stan Lee, and he's like, we couldn't make this movie until now. The tech didn't exist. Nobody could figure out how to do it practically. If you go back to the old George Reeves Superman show, he would just jump out of windows and they would cut. Like, there was no flying. There was no flying until Christopher Reeve.
Right. The implication.
Right. Like, technology is essential to filmmaking, and what the word technology means changes with the time. As an older technology becomes more mainstay, we almost don't think of it as technology anymore.
Right.
So then I started to see what I see now. I meet filmmaker after filmmaker after filmmaker, whether it's a short film, whether it's a feature film, whether it's a TV show. The first words out of their mouth is, we want to do everything that can be done practically.
Yeah.
And your filmmaker drives your process. So we no longer see digital effects as a crutch. Within my industry, it was, we'll silicone everything. Well, you know what? Latex and polyurethanes and other stuff, it all has a place. And I am very adamant on choosing material based on task, based on budget, based on chosen outcome. And then we started to see 3D printing being used for everything. And there's a lot of drawbacks, and the technology is getting better, but it's still never going to be 100% reliable for every task that people are trying to use it for.
Right.
Because the materials that you can run through those machines can't do and never will be able to do certain things.
Yeah, sure.
They can do a lot. They'll be able to do more. One of the big drawbacks is speed. You either have to have a gazillion printers going and sort of puzzle piece your thing together,
right,
or you're waiting forever. And then the specific technology you want requires a specific type of printer, and that's going to vary. And what I'm going to loosely call the better technologies, smaller printers are more readily available, and the bigger you get, the more astronomically expensive it gets. Like, to get a printer that I could use to the level I would want to use it at to print things in one piece with the technology I want to print, I'm looking at a $500,000 machine.
Damn. God damn.
And they're not even easy to locate companies that make them. Right. So people make the little ones work and they puzzle piece together, but then you got to get rid of all your join lines, and that affects textures. So for mold making applications, that's heavily limiting.
Yeah.
And that's what people are trying to use a lot of it for. For other things, the print materials aren't as durable as alternative materials we can work with our hands.
Yeah.
So does it have a place? Yeah. And I occasionally have stuff printed, but I have yet to invest in a single printer.
Right.
One, because of how rapidly it's changing. Like, whatever I buy is going to be obsolete in 2 years, and I'm just going to be annoyed that I own.
Yeah. So I'm curious because, you mentioned speed is a huge factor here, and also technology is ever rapidly changing, and you mentioned AI. So how do you feel personally as somebody who is a very, practical oriented, but also working with the technologies?
I have a lot of disdain for generative AI.
Sure.
I literally, there's people in the industry that have zero qualms using Chat GPT for funsy stuff or for emails or for other things. I don't use it. I've never used it.
Yeah.
I like writing my own stuff.
Yeah.
I like thinking my own thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think one of the issues, because there's a lot of issues and it goes far beyond the entertainment industry. One of the issues is the more AI comes to the fore with younger people, the less people are thinking.
Yep.
And that's a huge issue. Like
a very big issue.
There was a Star Trek Next Gen episode where the Enterprise landed on a planet that had been run by an AI system for like 200 years. So like generations. And the society, the living society, that's all they ever knew. And it started to break down and they were panicked. They didn't know how to run their own society. They were like, they couldn't figure out how to do anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what we are rapidly going to
that's our journey right now.
It's far more realistic than things like Terminators or The Matrix, which is scary. And don't get me wrong, that possibility is not as far-fetched as it sounds.
Nope, not at all.
It's leaning more towards the Star Trek episode. So that's okay. The fact that data centers use so much fresh water is a massive problem. But what's even crazier is if you stack that against the economic impact, not on people, but on AI companies. So what we know now, we're sort of where a lot of .com bubble companies were like 25, 30 years ago. Most AI companies aren't making money. And like many other companies, go watch some Shark Tank, they're going to have to hit a certain level of volume to be profitable. And that means probably 10 times for all of them to be profitable, probably 10 to 100 times the number of data centers we have right now. That's a lot of data centers. Yeah. That's a lot of water usage. That's a lot
energy of consumption. Yep.
It's a lot of affecting, because they're all going to go in smaller towns. You're not going to see them in giant cities, just like Walmart has been kept out of many large cities. Yep. You're just not going to see them. So much like Walmart, it's going to have a massive impact on smaller communities. That's bad.
Yeah. It's insane too, because it's not just, they're now like, they don't give a shit here in Nashville. They're putting one up catty corner from the zoo. Like, and that's more towards the city. So it's there.
But you're also seeing pushback in a lot of states and a lot.
Oh yes,
several states that are trying to pass statewide bans.
Yeah.
There are states that are going to cave. It's going to be poorer states.
Yep.
There's going to be lots of regrets.
Yep.
It's going to be too little too late. But then what's going to happen is you're going to see the .com boom all over again. You're going to see a lot of these companies, probably 80% of them or more, go under.
Yeah. Some
of them are going to get sold off and then dissolved, and their technologies are going to get absorbed into other companies. Like, I know there was talk of like Ben Affleck developed this AI company and then sold it. These are going to be like little AI technologies that just get absorbed into bigger companies. Like there was this guy that had a studio, I think he still does, in the Philippines. He had started the Amazon of Germany and got bought by Amazon. And yeah, he got bought, but then it just became Amazon. So it's not like his company still existed. That whole company is gone. It's long gone. So this is the same thing. So you're going to see all this stuff that nobody wants, that even the people cheering AI don't want happening because they're too blind to see it. It's inevitable. It's going to be the .com boom again. But the biggest issue with AI that we've never had with another technology in terms of utilization is all you can do is poke it with a stick. There is no way to force it to give you what you want. You see a lot of people in the entertainment industry say, well, you just got to learn how to use it or you'll be without a job. You're going to be without a job regardless, because the whole point behind AI was labor force reduction. So it's not like everybody can like laterally become a prompter and all of a sudden they have a job again. So it's going to cause huge joblessness across many industries. So a massive amount of the populace is going to be unemployed. This will have a bigger impact on unemployment than anything in the history of employment. So that's another issue. But the one of the biggest issues that I go back to again and again is the all you can do is poke it with a stick. Yeah, it's the quality will get better, but the amount of data processing it's going to take to get there is a big problem. And while our computers have statistically always gotten more efficient, I think the level of efficiency we need to hit for this to not be a problem in terms of computing efficiency is easily 20, 30 years out. There's a lot of damage to be done in the interim.
Oh yeah, it's yeah.
A lot of people think it's not that far out because all they're thinking about is what the software is capable of, not what it needs in terms of support staff.
Absolutely.
In this case, more advanced chips and more compression and more data management and processing efficiency. Like your phone can do things the computers of the 70s couldn't even dream of being able to do, no matter how many they filled a room with.
Yeah. Yep.
So we will get there. But again, that was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost 50. My grandfather worked on some of that stuff. Go watch Captain America 2. That room filled with computers that ran on tape reels. Like,
oh yeah.
So the point is, all you can do is poke it with a stick. And there was a great article where they interviewed an art director. I read this about a year ago. And a studio had asked him to use AI prompters instead of concept artists to save money. And much as anybody that's ever tried to do this will tell you, he told the prompters what he wanted. They prompted some stuff. He got some stuff. He's like, okay, this is okay, but I can't really use it. And he gave them a list of changes. And they went through multiple rounds. With each list of changes, it got further away from what he wanted. Whereas if you were dealing with a person, you would get closer.
Yep.
The AI will never, ever just be like a person using a software program.
Yeah.
It will never be capable of doing that. When you're using a software program or a pen and a piece of paper, people's ability varies, but you're taking what's in your head and extruding it into the world. And AI is never going to be a viable tool for that with the level of accuracy that other media are. It's impossible by the nature of what it is. People say otherwise, but it's impossible. Like, just consider what it is. You're feeding it ideas. It's trying to understand you, but it's not somebody that understands you.
Right, exactly.
If you sit down with a concept artist, that person, by virtue of the fact that they're a viable concept artist, has studied everything from anatomy to architecture to different designers and artists throughout history. But instead of just evaluating them the way a computer does, they understand.
Yes.
And they can say, okay, we want this scale shape, but we want this eye, and we want that building structure. And we can have a whole conversation about it, dial it in, and then they go make a thing.
Yep.
And then I can point to that and say, okay, let's reduce this by 20%. Let's increase this by 20%. Let's make that 30% darker. Like, you can give very specific finite instructions that they can follow. And the AI just, it's going to get closer, but it'll never hit it on the dot. So what you're going to get is a reinforcement of the old good enough culture. Well, it's close enough.
Yep, it'll do.
And then so that's going to affect usage in final product. There's some shit AI is going to do really well, like crowd fight scenes of armies. It's the perfect use of AI. Right. I don't think we need to get rid of AI. I think that AI just should be used more responsibly. And right now it's the crutch.
Yeah.
It should be used for scientific purposes and research purposes. Yep. That's the ideal use that I don't think anybody can be mad at.
Right, exactly. It's not a replacement for human creativity.
Yeah, it should probably never be used for military applications at all.
Yeah, maybe not. Like, let's maybe like avoid that.
I feel like that's the lesson learned by things like Terminator and The Matrix, and even things like what was that movie where the computer targeted everybody as a video game, but it was a real target. It was Eagle Eye, I think.
Okay.
Like, that's probably bad. But in the arts, one, I hate AI look, Not everything AI has AI look, but 95% of it does. You see people pitching a flurry of AI stuff, and the problem is it all bleeds together. There's no sense of distinct identity anymore.
Yep.
And that was inherent to quality pitching. It was inherent to online communities for stuff like this, where you would scroll and you would see such a graphic style difference from one thing to the next. And now it all looks the same. AI flyers, they all look the same. So I feel like if you understand basic psychology, that turns your brain off. I'm now not going to look at your stuff because I think I saw it already.
Yep. Because it's been there, done that. It's not original. Like,
right. There's nothing to tell my brain to pay attention to this.
Yeah. No, there's no soul behind
you
it.
Can't control that. It's subconscious. And that's the thing these people don't get. Now, all the people that claim they have no artistic ability are like, this freed me. It did, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It's a gilded cage.
Yeah.
And they can't see the forest for the trees, which is why you can't end up at the same place in a conversation with them. They think look at all the $50,000 filmmakers out there. They think this is a gift from God. They can now go make their movie. Yeah, it's not a movie worth making.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But they can't see that. Now they get to do the thing they could only dream of. And it won't be till like 10 years after they make it, they'll be like, this is not the thing I wrote. That's a really big thing with filmmakers that I deal with in the filmmaker groups. Like, you can't convince teeny tiny itty bitty budget filmmakers that all they're doing is taking the script they spent all their time on, throwing it in a pile of dog shit and jumping up and down on it. Like, that's all they're doing by under-resourcing their project. And they're like, we'll find a way. We get all these people. They help us. It's just never, all the people helping you for free are not the people you want because their skill level isn't where you want. Like, there's every compromise is hurting you, but they can't see it because of excitement factor. It is so hard to have knowledge. It's hard to have knowledge because you will always know that you're one of a smaller group of people and that you can only share that knowledge on sort of a one-on-one basis where it actually sinks in.
Right. Yeah.
Which is very slow growth compared to the growth of what I would call enabling ideas. And that's what AI is. It's another enabling idea that shut the brain off. Whenever there's an enabling idea, people are resistant to ideas that don't feel enabling. Because all those enabling ideas are firing the dopamine and serotonin.
Yep. Oh, AI is the worst enabler too. Like, it's like the companies, people don't even consider that the companies that put out these generative systems, like, they have, all of these people have motives of their own. So even the ideas that you put in there,
it can be altruistic, but every single one of them knows that whatever they do with it will never last unless it's profitable.
Yep.
Look at all the social media platforms that don't exist anymore. When I was a kid, I had Prodigy. Prodigy doesn't exist anymore. Friendster doesn't exist anymore. AOL doesn't exist anymore. AOL was like early social media.
Yeah.
MySpace doesn't really exist anymore. Like, it might be accessible, but nobody's using it.
Right. Fundamentally, it does not.
So, like, every single one of these is gone because they just weren't profitable. Because nobody shuts down a company when they're profitable. Well, it's not true. There are exceptions. But for the most part, nobody shuts down a giant company when it's profitable.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. So when it comes to profit and profitability, like, how do you, especially in the age of AI, how do you make yourself or the practicality of effects profitable to filmmakers who are,
that's a really funny question. It's not a funny question because it's a funny question because it comes from a place of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So people pushed this idea since the end of the 90s that digital effects were cheaper than practical. And that's not actually true. It's true under very specific circumstances. If you're making a tier 4 union movie, if you're on $100 million movie, you got a crew of 500 to 1,000 people. Every single one of them is pulling down somewhere between $750 a day to $2,000 a day. All your actors are at max union rate, which for a 12-hour day is, if you include all the stuff that doesn't even go to the actor, is probably like almost $4,000 a day.
Right.
When you're spending that kind of money and doing something digitally, which is non-union, by the way, although some companies do charge a lot for it, depending on their overhead. If you can cut shooting days by doing something digitally, you are saving ass loads of money,
right,
measured against what you're spending on that effect, depending upon what the effect is.
Right.
That's when it's cheaper. When you're making an independent film, because you can count on one hand the number of independent films that are made with 9-figure budgets. There's more made with 8-figure budgets than you might think.
Yeah.
Than a lot of people think, actually. There's quite a few every year. But the big 9-figure ones, you're talking about Valerian, you're talking about Megalopolis, you're talking about, if you convert for inflation, Caligula would have fit that category.
Damn.
It actually would have been about $100 million movie.
Damn.
So we can go back through cinema history and classify a few of those, but they're very limited.
Right.
So when we're talking about an independent film, high end, usually 50-ish million, low end, nondescript little numbers that you could fit in your wallet.
Right.
Practical is going to typically be cheaper.
Sure.
Overhead varies drastically, but you still need people and computing power and shit for digital. So if you're going to a large digital effects house, expect that every single person on that team, if it's in the US or Canada or Europe, is getting paid somewhere between $700 and $1,200 a day. And then you got to pay for management, and then you got to pay for overhead costs. So that's a hefty price tag. The practical is often cheaper, and depending upon the size vendor, like, I don't have a large outfit. I scale up and scale down. I'll scale up and do a temp rental space if I need to. But for you to do, let's look at something like a hairy creature, because hair's hard for digital. It's not impossible, it's just hard.
Right.
We've actually gotten fairly good at it, but it's still hard, and it's still complex for digital. So let's look at like a werewolf. So if I build you a werewolf suit at my level of overhead, and it doesn't have backbent legs, and it doesn't have animatronics, it's got prosthetics on the face or really simple actor movable mechanisms, no overextended fingers, just nice and basic.
Yeah.
Knowing that it has hair does add cost. Let's say it shoots for one day. We're just going to simplify the shit out of this.
Okay.
I can probably do that for $75,000 and still make money on it.
Okay.
Maybe $100,000.
Yeah.
You go to somebody that has a warehouse size space all year, but a smaller one. For them, with their overhead, you're probably looking at maybe another $50,000, $75,000 on top of my number. You go to one of the really big guys, you can probably double that. So now we're probably at about $300-ish grand. For somebody to do all of that digitally, they have a challenge that none of us have. They have to make the light hit a thing that wasn't there being lit identically to everything else in every single frame.
Okay.
And they have to have non-physical stuff move according to our laws of physics.
Right.
So things like the hair, as well as anatomical stuff, which you get a little bit more freedom on. A touch.
Right.
A touch.
A hair.
Precisely. So that's a challenge, and that's extra time. Every challenge is extra time. So for a bad-ass, equally looking werewolf, you are probably looking at $400,000 or $500,000, depending upon how many shots it's in and how they're lit. First, you have to build the model. And I'm going to let you know a little secret. A lot of digital models for really advanced stuff are practical things that get scanned.
Oh, wow. Okay.
the company that did all the prosthetic work for Masters of the Universe actually modeled Skeletor's face and gave it to the digital company. The body was a suit.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So they'll scan it. There's people that'll build a model from the ground up, absolutely. But on a lot of the bigger stuff, they'll go practical and scan it.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that with hair. So, like, if you look at Aquaman, and they did a good job with this, because of the shots being underwater and the fact that they were shooting on green screens and stuff, they had to model all of their hair to float underwater.
Gosh,
so everyone's hair was actually tied back, and it was modeled in post.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they did a good job with it. It looked good, but they just threw a lot of money at it, and a really good vendor. I think that was probably done by ILM. So it's not cheaper. It's the fact that it's cheaper is a myth. And one of the funny things about myths is they get perpetuated really fast in the independent community by people that don't know what they're talking about. And they take what other people say as gospel. So I see tons of myths in the low budget groups, like all the time. Like, no, that's not true. What you just said is absolutely not true. But they believe it. And you're one voice and there's like 100 voices. So who are you going to listen to based on how you were raised? Do you listen to the majority?
The masses.
Right.
Right. Even when it's not right.
Right. But you think it's right because you're educated to believe that if everybody's saying one thing and one person's saying something else, that person's probably wrong.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to combat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, digital's a tool. I'm not afraid of digital. I'll tell people, like, let's do a combo shot, or like, you should just digital that.
Right. Right. You're like, I'm the first one to tell someone.
I do development work. We've talked about this. And I had this nightmare development client that I actually had to literally divest myself of through legal means, because she just couldn't be taught. She was convinced of stuff that was wrong and nobody was going to change her mind. And it ended up blowing up in my face. But part of one of the things that she's like, I wrote this low budget movie, and I'll give you a really great example. She had a shot where a woman gets lifts off the ground in front of a window with flying shears. To anybody listening, shears are sheer curtains that are billowing in the wind. And she's just floating there in the air. I'm like, do you have any idea how expensive that is? I was like, that's a wire rig. Oh, and the actor was naked. I was like, that's a wire rig. But then somebody's going to have to digitally paint out of every single frame the harness.
Yep.
And repaint the skin that got tugged.
Yep.
And because the wire will block the curtain natural flow, you're going to have to animate the curtains. I was like, that's a $500,000 shot in your low budget movie.
Right. In your humble budget movie.
And it's just, I very often, I learned enough about writing. I don't write. I can't write. I can write about like stuff that I know about, but I can't like write narrative content or scripts or anything. I am constantly blown away by one of the major tenets of teaching writing is write with abandon. Do not place limitations on yourself. And I'm like, that's great if you're writing a script for funsies, or if you have a viable shot at selling to a studio. But if your plans are anything other than those two things, you should absolutely write for a budget.
Yeah. That was very much how I approached House of Flies. I was like, I would really like to make this movie. We're probably not going to have a ton of money to do it. So I'm curious too, especially as somebody who's been through this a lot, do you feel like that was accomplished throughout the narrative?
I do. I think there's basically 4 departments. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this because somebody's going to be like, you left out my department. And I'm like, no, I didn't. There's 4 departments that are unilaterally least understood by people that actually run the show on a movie. There's makeup and makeup effects. That's one department. There's costume and specialty costume. Specialty costume are things like, astronaut suits or super suits or armor and shit. There's art department, which is comprised of a whole host of departments. You got greens, you've got props, which includes specialty props. You've got set deck, You've got design, you've got graphics, you've got rigging, you've got art direction, which is different than the design aspect. You've got drafting, you've got all this stuff. And then you've got visual effects. And the thing that I've learned, it's one of the reasons I started doing the development work I do and the preliminary budgeting work that I do, is that line producers don't make stuff. My degree background, coupled with friends I've made in the industry and things I've learned about their crafts, coupled with my own craft and just shit I do in my spare time, gave me a massive, and working side by side with a digital company when I was in Asia for 4.5 years. It taught me almost everything I need to know about those departments. It taught me what I need to know about if somebody gives me a quote, how to tell if it's too low. It allowed me to do rudimentary pricing myself before seeking a quote or getting questions answered so I could ask more pointed questions.
Sure.
Line producers don't have that.
Yeah.
When's the last time you met a line producer that built a piece of furniture or made a rubber mask or stitched an outfit?
Yeah.
Or did some basic posts. I mean, basic digital effects. You'll find a lot of filmmakers will play with that, but none of the advanced stuff.
Sure.
So what often happens on small movies, and this whole thing came out of the video store era because it worked then, because you didn't have a burden of quality and you had guaranteed sales. Yeah, which is a lovely combination that doesn't exist.
Right.
It's a magic combination that only existed in the history of cinema for about 25 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is a very
period of time. Yeah. Very brief period of time.
But people are still budgeting the way they did then because they don't understand. They think they understand, but they don't understand. And it's really basic stuff. So in the video store era, you could go make a dog shit movie. You were going to probably be able to sell, I don't know, guaranteed 100, 200,000 units on VHS. You were going to make money no matter how bad the movie was. It didn't even matter. Yeah. I saw some horribly made movies at Blockbuster when I was a kid. Yeah. They wouldn't keep the shelves full. They would buy anything. They made their money off the better movies. And that other stuff was just free money. Somebody would rent it periodically. Yeah. 4 rentals paid for it.
Yep.
So that's how that worked. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And people are still making movies doing these work backwards budgets from a target number. Either it's we got to stay in this SAG tier or we have to stay in this IATSE tier. Ironically, it's never we have to stay in this DGA tier. The DGA is a lovely conversation about, like, you hate IATSE, you should learn more about the DGA. As a producer, you should learn more about the DGA. They're the ones that are actually killing you. Yeah. Them and the Teamsters, who basically only have one. They have more than one tier, but they basically only have one tier. It's complicated. So whatever it is, or this is all the money we can get. We have just decided we will never get another dollar than this. This is all we can get. Or some distro company has stated we have to make it for this, or they won't give us a deal. Whatever it is, there's a dollar amount.
Sure.
And they'll go and they'll scratch and scrape and they're like, well, we just can't get food for less than X. Scratch that off, subtract it from the whole. We can't get gear, maybe we own the gear, so we're throwing in the gear, but we can't get these lenses or whatever for less than X. Whatever it is, they go through all the stuff that they understand. And they build a schedule saying, well, we can't shoot faster than X. So now we know we need the grip for 15 days. We know we need on-set makeup for 15 days. All right, we'll assign a rate that we think we can get somebody to say yes to, which is sometimes less than minimum wage where they're shooting.
Yikes.
Or it's a very low rate, but it's a livable rate. And they'll subtract all of that. All of a sudden, you're left with a little bit of a surplus. And that is arbitrarily divided amongst and gets tugged back and forth between those departments for things like prep and wrap, and even on set when it wasn't calculated properly. Yeah. Because the people calculating it don't know. So the next best thing is those people know they don't know. So they'll find a bunch of small vendors and ask for bids. And this is where we get into dangerous territory that nobody thinks will be dangerous territory, because most artists aren't math people. Yeah. So I am very blessed to be very left brain, right brain. It's allowed me to not shoot myself in the foot on running a business.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to be flexible, knowing how much I could flex and still make enough money to keep the lights on and feed myself. And not live in a cardboard box. But a lot of people don't have that skill as smaller vendors. They like me do all the running of stuff themselves.
Yeah.
They don't have any full-time employees. You go to bigger vendors, there's full-time coordinators that do nothing but budget. The way they work is they go department to department. They get quotes from their department people based on giving them a list of hard deliverables. And then they usually multiply that by 2, 3, or 4 times. And that's the bid. So obviously smaller movies can't really afford that kind of bidding. So they go to smaller vendors. And the small vendor thinks they're doing it right. They're adding stuff up. They're making lists. And they'll say, okay, here's a bid. And then more often than not, based on the work backwards thing, production's like, well, we can give you X. And oftentimes when you suck at math, that number, especially if it's 5 digits or even 6 digits, seems like a lot of money, especially if it's your first or second time doing a build that size. You're like, oh, I can make that. That's a lot of money. I've never even held that much money. It's not. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it runs out. And then just becomes this huge argument between production and the vendor, and everybody's mad at each other and nobody gets what they want.
Yeah.
And inevitably it forces, I've seen this force at least 200 people that I personally know out of the industry to go live with their mom and dads because they had to lose money on one too many projects. And what a lot of filmmakers aren't, I don't think, fully willing to accept is that it's their fault, that they're the reason somebody went bankrupt. And a lot of people say, well, that person's an adult. They said yes. Well, yes, but the filmmaker benefited from 2 things. They benefited from that person's lack of mathematical ability.
Yeah.
And they benefited from psychological conditioning. You know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those that don't, a lot of people I think have heard of Pavlov's dog. That's psychological conditioning. It's basically repeatedly inputting data into a person to get them to believe something. And when you go to film school, and if you don't go to film school and you go to makeup school or costume school or art school, and if you don't go to those places, when you read books, when you hang out in internet forums, when you take seminars or short classes, you are told the same thing by the people you are learning from over and over and over again. You have to start out working for free. You have to work for cheap. You have to sacrifice X. You always have to have a solution. You never say no to the director. You never say no to the producer. Every next movie could be your golden opportunity to have the career you want to have. And when this is all you're hearing, other than the occasional person going, that's bullshit, which I try to do, you know, with more detail, of course.
Sure, of course.
When that's conditioning you to believe that this is the truth, especially if it's a school environment, because you're literally paying those people to tell you that.
Right, right.
And most younger people aren't going to deep dive on their instructors. So, I mean, as it gets a little easier to do, more people do it, but most people aren't going to do that. They're going to assume that the school is hiring people that know what the fuck they're doing, and they're going to trust that education.
Yeah.
And some will grow beyond their education. I've seen people that went to makeup school 20 years ago and still do things the way they were taught in school, even though it doesn't make sense. And that makes me want to rip all my hair out.
Yeah.
The point is, the filmmakers some are good people that want to do what I do every day and be a better person. Every day I try to be a better person than I was the day before. Absolutely. I try to learn, I try to grow. Some filmmakers do that, but most filmmakers are more than happy to say they said yes, this is on them. The fact that they're living on Skid Row now, that's on them. They shouldn't have said yes. Yeah, but you accepted it. You could have very easily said, this is clearly not enough money. We should not be doing this.
Right. Like, oh, no, we can't. If we can't take care of you, then we should not do this. Like
our business model shouldn't be putting people out of their houses.
Right.
That just shouldn't be an acceptable
ruining livelihoods.
But it is a business model. It's a business model, and the only reason it perpetuates, other than the occasional sleazy filmmaker, is psychological defense mechanisms like that person said yes, not my problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're an adult, they could have said no.
Yeah, psychological conditioning absolves us from responsibility. So, or at least
that's the thing. It's the psychological conditioning is what makes it our responsibility.
Yeah.
So the lack of acknowledgement of the conditioning is what makes it the other person's fault.
Right.
Unless you accept that psychological conditioning is real, I'm just talking about your gobbledygook, and it is the vendor's fault. Yes.
Right.
But if you understand it, then you realize that person kind of can't say no to you.
Yeah.
They've been brainwashed not to say no to you.
Yeah.
They've been brainwashed to give you the yes you want. And then in the middle is the whole tug of war thing. Like, I told you a project ghosted me recently. They told me who one of the other people bidding on the project was, and they told me the number he put it. It was an impossibly low number. Really? And I was like, did he break that down at all for you? So they actually went through the breakdown with me. And I was like, all right, here's how I think he's going to do this, and here's why it's a bad idea for you.
Yeah.
And I said, basically, if he does anything other than some version of what I'm describing to you for each of these things, he's losing money on the job.
Yeah.
A lot of these jobs are desperation plays for the artist. Got to pay the rent this month. Half the time, you know you're going to lose money, and you figure, well, 2 other things will come along, and I'll just work 20 hours a day all month long, and it'll get me through this month. Like, if that was going to get me through the next 4 months, maybe.
Yeah.
But like, the industry's oversaturated. Practically every industry is oversaturated. That's a problem. What's equally a problem is schools not auditioning people because that's in it for business, because they make less money. And if makeup schools actually limited admittance to people that showed real deal potential and a real deal like work ethic, they'd probably all go out of business. They wouldn't get enough volume.
Yeah.
And film schools are in somewhat the same boat, and then there's the people that are like, well, who are we to say that person could be the next whoever? That's a great way to like dismiss oversaturating an industry and ruining everybody's chances.
Yep.
One of the things we found is with makeup school, it usually takes 3 years for somebody to realize that they're not meant to do this as a profession and to quit. And during those 3 years, they are taking jobs from people that should have gotten those jobs.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that is true in other fields as well.
Yeah, it's becoming an issue.
It's been
industry-wide, worldwide. It's a global issue.
Tipping point in my industry was probably around 1997, 1998. And I got into this in 2004.
Okay. And since then, I'm curious though, you've done a lot of work in the industry. What is the thing that you are most proud of?
It's hard to answer that at face value. There's different things I'm proud of for different things. There's some makeups that we did on little short films that were just really cool.
Yeah.
We managed to get enough financial cooperation from production to do it the way I wanted to do it, or some version of that. There are cool gags that we've done in different things. I did a movie back in 2007 with a guy that I met on a movie in 2006 that was just a fun, wild ride of a movie. It's the only time I ever had to purposefully do some bad makeups.
Okay.
And it had to be within a film within a film. But the general premise was there's a production, an all-gay production of The Three Musketeers happening. And
love.
It was called The Three Musketeers.
Oh my God.
And the actors playing the Musketeers and D'Artagnan have a heavy flat fall on them, and they're injured and they can't continue. And this guy who's got a background role is a martial artist, and he goes to his friends at this dojo that he goes to. The sensei at the dojo is about to lose the dojo. He's losing money. And he's like, you guys could be the new Musketeers. They're all straight.
Right, right.
They're the perfect low-budget action stars. So they get hired. You know, the guy that played the director is a guy that runs a bunch of clubs down in West Hollywood, and he is just a hoot. He was so much fun. He said some shit that had we had to do multiple takes because some of the shit he said was too funny and the crew couldn't hold themselves. There was just tons of ridiculous gags and absurd bullshit, silly makeups, and just it was a fun, wild ride. I've never been so tired and not felt it in my entire life.
Yeah.
You know, getting to work on a Marvel movie, even though it was only for a week and doing really small little shit that most people wouldn't notice was still really amazing for me because I'm a huge Marvel nut.
Sure.
So the week I spent working on Infinity War was really cool.
Is there a moment where you were like, this is why I got into this? You know, like this is why I wanted to do this.
Every day when I get up and go out into my workshop, and I'm about an hour and a half into my day, making a mold, doing a sculpture, painting something, or I've arrived on set, I've gotten through the first application of the day, which is sometimes the only application, and I'm, you know, cleaning my hands of whatever I happen to put on my hand when I'm test painting, because I use the back of my hand the way most old school people do.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, I have one more question for you. Straight to the point. What in horror has made you applause lately?
I'm really picky about horror. And like I said earlier, a lot of people think all we do is horror. And I have to like politely explain, like, you know, for me, in some ways, a dream job would be Pirates of the Caribbean. Like I've got to do 100 character makeups and design them all. And they've all got little dentures and contact lenses, and some have little prosthetics. You know, in another way, it's like getting to do your version of Predator, like some really cool creature that is multifaceted. You know, in other ways, it's other things. But I think less than 40% of my career has been horror. It's not that I don't like it. I like it. It's fun. I like, as we've established, I like working with my hands. I don't even need to work on movies with good screenplays. Yeah, it's nice when they have a good screenplay, but I got into this to make stuff. So as long as I can help somebody make their vision come true, and that puts money in my pocket, and I get to do it doing things I enjoy doing, as opposed to like working in retail or whatever, that's a win for me.
Hell yeah.
So people will be like, oh, did you do the script? Yeah, I get really excited about a project with a good script, but I also know that you can make a bad movie out of a good script. So
absolutely.
I also take it with a grain of salt. And that goes to underfunding and underfinancing and things like that, poor management of enough funds, all that stuff. That's a deep dive we could do someday. In terms of horror, you know, there's different things over the years that I've really enjoyed. A lot of it tends to bleed into sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking at certain things, like I really loved The Burrows, and there's definitely some horror elements to that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite horror movies of all time is Lord of Illusions. And a close second, which is definitely very sci-fi, is Event Horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great movie.
And those movies came out, what, like 30 years ago?
Yeah.
You know, The Exorcist. Actually, somewhat recently, there was a movie with Russell Crowe called The Pope's Exorcist. And that was really
yes. Yeah. That was, I had fun with that one.
Somebody that, like, I want a story that's more than somebody had a shitty childhood and turned it into a slasher movie. Like, I will work on those all day long. They're fun to work on because I'm making things and I'm solving problems. But by no means will I ever sit down and watch one because they all feel the same to me. I honestly feel that way about zombie stuff too. They all feel the same to me. With exorbitantly limited exception. Like I read one that still hasn't been produced yet. That's a very good exception. But I'll make zombies all day long. They're fun to make.
Right. I'll make the movies. I don't care.
I think a lot of the psychological horror stuff just doesn't really hit for me because I like things that have meat behind them. And what I mean by that is I like something that has a mythos. It's why Lord of Illusions is great. It's why all the Clive Barker stuff is great. Like there's a whole other universe that operates on pain and suffering, and that's just like their norm.
Yeah.
And that's like not a bad thing in their universe. It's just what they do. It's like going to an Italian American or Jewish person's house and having somebody there just try to force feed you food all day. Like, it's just ingrained.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's the culture.
Right. That's the culture.
So, like, that's Pinhead and his posse's culture. That's the Cenobite culture.
That's how they get down. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a whole other dimension where all this crazy shit can happen, and there's a monster that kills you in your sleep. Like, that's fucking cool.
Right.
All the different monster movies over the years, ranging from Pumpkinhead to John Carpenter's The Thing, which is the best iteration of The Thing. Even though it's not the original. You know, all these different things, like, there's meat to them.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me like them. It leaves me wanting to know more. It's just like Star Wars. Like, I want to know what Yoda was like for 900 years before we first met him. And we got a little inkling of that, but they only went back like 100 some odd years. Like, what happens if we go back 500 years?
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
I want to know more.
Yeah.
And a lot of horror doesn't give me that.
Yeah. That's true. A lot of it is, there's especially, I mean, the genre in general is so filled with tropes. It's so easy to get an audience in horror. So a lot of people don't ever feel the need to, you know, think outside of the box or subvert expectations.
Baked in varying levels of gore porn, low budget horror, doesn't even have to look good in terms of the effects work or some of the other work for that matter. Audience. And you can probably make some money if you make it cheap enough. But then we get back to the whole, like, what is an acceptable business model question?
Right.
But yeah, for me, like, I guess my standards are too high for a lot of people.
Hey, that's fair. You like what you like, and you're just a man of class and taste. That's all.
It's really interesting having some of the shit I like being referred to as class and taste, because it's like dismembered. There's a scene in John Carpenter's Vampires where where this dude gets slit up the middle by one of the vampires and just splits open. And, you know, you see like every single organ in his rib cage and his brain cut in half. And like, that's classy, if anything.
Class.